like so many other people, I woke up to a horrifying video of an Asian woman being brutally beaten for no reason other than her race. And an elderly Asian woman walking the streets of Hell's Kitchen could easily have been my mother, because that's where we live. And so when I saw this video, that is who I thought of. My children actually play in that playground across the street from that apartment building regularly. So seeing this happen in my neighborhood hit very close to home. It also was incredibly disheartening how the bystanders, in this case the personnel at the building, did nothing and apparently didn't even go to the woman's aid after it was clear that she was in distress. And this is exactly the opposite of what we need here in New York City. We need to be able to come together, help each other, and provide assistance when someone clearly needs it, particularly if that person is in some kind of physical danger or is under attack. There was another attack on the subway that we have less information about, but there were clearly a dozen plus people on that subway car who watched the event unfold. And in New York, we're much better than this. I mean, if you see something, you should do something to help. And I've been in this situation where I know it can seem daunting in the moment, but you're going to come home that night and then you're going to look in the mirror and say, did I do everything to help this person? Clearly, this woman did not get the help that she needed, nor did the person on the subway. So I call again on the mayor to fully fund the Asian Hate Crimes Task Force, which still is not a fully funded unit, as far as we all can tell. These incidents are becoming all too commonplace. They're heartbreaking. There's no place for this in New York City. And if I'm the next mayor, I will take these hate crimes with the seriousness that they merit. People should be able to walk the streets of New York without fear, particularly based upon their ethnicity or race. Thank you all. Happy to take any questions.
Andrew, will you speak to any instances of bias that you have personally experienced?
When I walked the streets of New York a little more than a year ago, there was a different energy, and certainly I think many Asian Americans felt this hostility, people shrinking away from you on the subway, people glaring at you, and making you feel like they did not want you to be there. I think that's an experience that many Asian Americans have had over the last number of months, and it's really disheartening for so many people, but that sense has unfortunately evolved into something more dangerous and violent, and that's something that has no place in New York City.
What's your message to Asian New Yorkers who are now afraid to leave their homes, especially the elderly?
We can't let fear keep us from it. Thank you. We can't let fear keep us from seeing our families, enjoying our neighborhoods, feeling part of the community. What I'd say to Asian Americans who have this sense of fear, I understand. It would be impossible not to feel this way, but we can't let fear win. We can reach out to friends and family and say, look, instead of going for a walk individually, maybe you walk with someone. Maybe it's actually a reason to connect with someone. If you wanted to take a trip on the subway, maybe you can have a friend who has a similar commute go with you. So there's no reason for us to give in to fear, but we can adapt and do things that make us feel more secure and more comfortable.
What else do you think should be done in the city to prevent future similar attacks?
I'm sorry?
What else do you think should be done in the city to prevent future similar attacks?
Well, there are a number of things city government should do. Number one, again, is to fully fund the Hate Crime Task Force. It's not something that can be left to volunteers. We should categorize these incidents as hate crimes when they clearly are, and a number of incidents have not been treated as such. And we need to build connections with the Asian American community so that these incidents get reported when they're not videotaped. But the single biggest thing we can do is get people back out on the subway and on the street so that when these incidents take place, they're actually documented. Because of the lack of safety protestations in response to increased incidents there before the NYPD adopted that. I think it's entirely appropriate to have increased NYPD in areas that are seeing increased incidents of violence, or if there's a particular community that is targeted, and that could be the Asian community, it could be the Jewish community, it could be the Muslim community. It just depends upon what we're seeing. But it's entirely appropriate for the police to elevate their presence in a neighborhood that is experiencing increases of violence.
Do you have a sense of whether the extent that there has been elevated presence of police this month? Do you have a sense whether that's helped at all?
Well, it's difficult to say, but I do think that having police be visible in certain areas, at a minimum, gives people a sense that there are people who are frankly looking out for them and are vigilant if there are any possible threats when they're on the subway or when they're walking the street.
Andrew, I want to try again on personal impact, if you don't mind. What are you telling your family? What are you telling your sons? I mean, how do we explain this to our children at large?
Well, my boys are a little bit young, where they're 8 and 5, and my 8-year-old is autistic. So I will say that right now they're not really aware of this particular phenomenon. And I mean they're learning about race generally as a concept, but it's not the kind of thing where they feel like their personal well-being is impacted. And Evelyn and I think that's probably appropriate given their age.
And may I ask you also just the responsibility or weight you might feel just as one of the highest profile Asian Americans in city politics at this point? Would you think about how you use your platform, how you use your voice?
I mean, I'm deeply affected by these incidents as someone whose family, again, it like seeing these elderly Asian women getting beaten on the streets of New York, it feels like I could see my mother in that situation. Literally, my mother walks that street in Hell's Kitchen, somewhat regularly. So it's the kind of thing where I think we should all feel a responsibility, but certainly at this close number.
Do you think Asian New Yorkers feel supported and represented right now in city government? Do you think Asian New Yorkers feel represented and heard in city government right now?
I mean, I can't speak for what Asian Americans feel about city representatives. I have been heartened by the diversity of the officials who've shown up for the Asian American community at the set of recent events, be they vigils or rallies against hate. I think that New Yorkers recognize that this is something that affects everyone.